All right, I'm gonna chalk it up to the fact that it's 15 minutes to 5 a.m. in the United States, and it's a little early here. Maybe the microphone had to wake up first. So let me try to share my screen. I have a short presentation on NFPA 921. I'll go rather quickly through the presentation, and then I will share it with the group through our friends in Budapest, that they can send it out to the entire group as a PDF. So I'll share it, but I'll go rather quickly in the sake of time this morning. So let's see if we can share the screen. Why don't I do this? Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So NFPA 921 was updated late last year. So the 2021 edition is now out. Its companion document that many of you are familiar with is NFPA 1033. But that was not updated. They are working on putting the two documents on what we refer to as the same cycle. So 1033 and 921 will come out at the same time in the future. I believe at the time of the next edition of 921, 1033 will be released at the same time, and then they will continue to be on the same cycle. Just as a refresher for many of us, that 921 is a guide for fire and explosion investigations that's used around the world, and it explains the methodology of fire and explosion investigations, the how-to, if you will, and it focuses on the systematic investigation and analysis of fire and explosions. It's based in science. What do the facts point to? And it balances the experience of the investigator with the facts of the case. So it doesn't completely rule out if someone has been an investigator for many years and has what we refer to as a gut feeling or an instinct about a particular point of the investigation. But you have to take that instinct and base it in science and determine if it was valid or not. And we refer to it here in the United States as a standard of care. In other words, it's a reference document that is used widely in fire investigations. The methodology that it's stressed throughout the document, including on the cover of the document, if you note the circle here on the cover, refers to the systematic approach and the scientific method of fire investigation. In other words, organization and analytical process to do the investigation. First, you find the origin of the area of the fire, and then within that area of origin, you should find the cause. And this chart here appears throughout the document, and this is just another version of the scientific method in a flowchart format. Just a reminder of 1033 and how it is a companion document to 921. 1033 contains job performance requirements for fire investigators. In other words, what is it that you should be expected to do as a fire investigator to be a competent fire investigator? This is an example of a job performance requirement in a flowchart form, just using, for example, the chain of custody for evidence. and who should maintain it and the things you should do to maintain a valid chain of custody so the evidence can be introduced should the case go to a court of law. This is the heart of NFPA 1033. This is what's referred to as the Sweet 16. This is 16 points of knowledge that a fire investigator should have above and beyond, we'll say, the high school level. And these 16 items should be something that you are familiar with and have knowledge in to be a competent fire investigator. And this is based in NFPA 1033, Chapter 1, Section 3.7. This is an example of some of the job performance requirements based in 1033. Scene examination, documenting the scene, evidence collection, interviewing techniques, post-incident investigation, and then presentations, either in court or before a large group explaining about the investigation, just like our friends from Estonia just did for us. Now, NFPA 921 is released on average every 3 years. And the remaining slides, I'm just going to cover the changes in the document. We take public comment on our documents and introduce many of those input and comments within the document at the oversight of the committee that is writing the document. And in 921, in the last cycle, they received over 800 public comments and inputs. Every chapter of the 29 chapters in the document has some changes. I'm only going to go over the major changes that occurred here, where there was too many changes to go over in a short presentation. There were some definitions that were changed and modified slightly, including the definition of a canine handler and a canine handler team. This is the team of a dog, an accelerant detection dog, and their handler, and how they work together on the scene of a fire. Some straight definitions on fire patterns, arc melting, and server arc, and arc mapping, as it's referred to in the study of an electrical fire. And some additional definitions. They even made a small change to the definition of the word fire. And that's how basic some of these definition changes were. And again, these will be in the presentation I will share with you, so I'm not going to read them all verbatim this morning. Line of demarcation. We refer to it in some cases as the neutral plane, where the smoke and heat lines are found on the walls or in other objects within the fire that allows you to start to trace fire spread. Fire effects and fire patterns. There were some changes made in this chapter, mainly to bring it more in line with the scientific method and the flow chart that I noted earlier in the presentation. A chapter on active fire protection systems. These are sprinkler and alarms and other suppression type systems. There was more detail and more technology into the chapter on as technology changes in these systems. They brought a lot of that new technology into the document. They made changes and some additions on heating systems as technology changes. They added some additional details on heating systems and those systems as sources of ignition in a fire. They've made some additions and some revisions in Chapter 9 on electricity and fire. A lot of arc mapping the arc mapping discussion was moved out of this chapter and into chapter 6, but they added some more additional information on electrical causes of fires. A section on lithium batteries was added as that technology becomes more and more present in our everyday lives and technology, whether it's automobiles or appliances or things as simple as cell phones and computers. Lithium-ion batteries are being found in everything that we do nowadays, and they're becoming a cause of fires, and investigators are seeing them as the cause of fires in many more cases now. The section on investigator safety did not have a complete revision, but a large number of changes were made as more technology and more research is done on the topic of safety of fire investigators, mainly in the area of respiratory protection and wearing masks and filters and such while conducting fire investigations. And this is an ongoing source of study in the United States and elsewhere, as the bad, toxic atmospheres in which investigators often work are having a serious toll on the health of many investigators. And research is ongoing constantly on ways to improve this. The next slide showed several posters and reports that had been done on fire investigator safety. The link at the bottom of the poster in the forefront here will allow you to download many of those from the IAAI website. And there's also more information on the CFI trainer website, which is available free of charge. If you go to the safety module, you can download some of these items. Just a couple of more changes as I wrap things up here. There were significant additions to sources of information in Chapter 14. I mentioned earlier canine detection teams, the handlers and the dogs themselves. There was a lot more information that was placed in Chapter 15 and Chapter 17. There were some revisions on documentation and some of the techniques to document your investigation. And in addition to chapters 18 on origin determination, 19 on the fire cause, and then 20 on classification and the difference between classification and cause. And then some of the other revisions, and I'll focus mainly on chapter 28. There's been a long ongoing study on the adding more detail on the investigation of wildfires, forest fires. Mind you, if you're following the news, you'll see that the United States has had a terrible season this year on wildfires, especially in our western states. And the investigation of wildfires is becoming more and more important, and more details have been added into the document on how to conduct a proper wildfire investigation. In closing, again, I will share this with you, so the finer details will be available to you in a PDF document that at the end of the meeting I will share, so the group can have that information. And it also will include my contact information. So if you have a question on 921 or anything else in the NFPA library, whether it be one of our documents or some research that we have available to you, if you cannot find it on our website, please reach out to me at the email here or at one of these two phone numbers, and I'll help you as the best I can.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It was very interesting.
Thank you. I'm glad the microphone finally worked for me.
Yeah, it's much easier to make a presentation with voice. Yeah. I would like to ask one question. Is this changes of this NFPA 921, is it accessible only the changes or the whole document in one thing?
The whole document is available to browse on our website without without any charge if you go to the website, and I can include the instructions on how to do that when I send my presentation to you.
All right. Yes.
It's available like I call it an e-reader, like a Kindle or something. You can read it and you can change pages. You cannot cut, paste, or print free of charge. You can order it online. Most of you in Europe have local contacts to work through and order NFPA documents. If not, if you don't have one, reach out to me via email and I'll get our international folks on that and find a distributor in your area where you could purchase it using your currency and not having to worry about any conversions or anything like that.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.